All right, welcome back. And now we're going to talk about other inverse trigonometric functions. So just like we saw with sine, we have arc sine, and arc sine has a domain of from -1 to 1, right, in the x direction. In the y direction, it goes from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, okay? Similarly, with cosine, think of the cosine function here. We notice how, again, if we restrict the domain to a certain segment where it satisfies those conditions that we were talking about earlier, for example, being 1 to 1, then we can have an inverse, okay? So if we look at the cosine function, and if we restrict it from the domain to 0 to pi, then we have a function that is decreasing on that interval, right? So it's decreasing on the open interval, right? It's also 1 to 1 on that interval, okay? And so it does have an inverse when restricted to that domain, okay, from 0 to pi. So that means we can talk about the inverse function of cosine. So again, on this interval for cosine, inverse sine is going to have a range of 0 to pi and a domain from where? And it also, again, it goes from 1 to -1, right? Just like sine, okay? So in this case here, for our cosine, the domain is going to be what? The domain is going to go from -1 to 1, right? The range is going to go from 0 to pi. Okay? And how is that going to look? Well, it'll look something like this. Right? So it's going to go from 0 to pi. So it's going to look something like that. Right? Oh, hold on. I messed up. It's not 0 to pi. This is 0 to pi. Let me draw it this way. Like that. So we'll do 2. Yeah, we'll do from here. Let's say this is pi. Like that. That's better. Because it doesn't go below the x-axis. Not like arc sine did. Okay, so the range is from 0 to pi, and the domain is from -1 to 1. Okay, now what about arctangent? Okay, arctangent, now remember, how does tangent look? Okay, tangent looks like this. Right, so tangent goes from -pi over 2 to pi over 2, and it looks like this, right? So it looks like that, right? So the domain is negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, and the range is all real numbers. Okay, but what about arctangent? Well, arctangent, now think about this. Remember, it's a reflection about the y equals x key. So what's going to happen here? Well, it's going to look, so again, so it's going to look like this, right? So it's going to go from pi over 2 to negative pi over 2, and it's going to look something like this. Okay, so arctangent the domain of arctangent is going to be all real numbers, and the range is going to go from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Okay, and again, we could use arc cosine, or we can use the cosine inverse notation. Same thing with arctangent. We can use the tangent inverse notation as well. Okay, can be used interchangeably. All right, so we'll come back, we'll give the definitions, and we'll go forward.